Hello, ladies.
Hi there.
Hi, Angela, Sandra.
Hi
Hello,
there.
and welcome to Women's Lik. We're full of laughs, ideas, and knowledge. Looking forward to today's show because we're talking about love. How are you?
I've even got my love heart on my jacket. Have you seen that?
Oh, that's so good. I've got the red on. I've got my lipstick.
Beautiful ladies. Oh, I've got my fur, my little fur stole on. I've gone for the sensual look here.
Love it.
Oh, so how was your Valentine's Day, guys? I know it was a couple of weeks ago.
Well, I don't really sort of celebrate Valentine's Day. I've got to be honest with you. It's Valentine's Day every day for me. So I just sort of like think you should be romantic every day, even if it's just making somebody a cup of tea. For me, that's it's a nice thing to do. But what about yourselves?
Well, I had my full Valentine's Day just for me. I had a nice candlelit bath and not say a glass of wine. I'm not really a drinker, but yes, a little bit of a tipple, and just spent it relaxing, eating chocolates,
Nice,
hot scented chocolates. So it's just all about me because I'm loving me. That's more important.
I love that. That's so positive. So positive. So me and my husband, we went to an exhibition on the 15th of February. Just to be different, that whole thing about being out on Valentine's Day. Yeah. We deliberately don't celebrate the day because, like yourself, Sandra, we don't think we have to be told when to be loving and when to do stuff. So we went out on the day after.
Nice.
An exhibition, an art exhibition, and I love art. And he chose it and organised it, and we went for dinner afterwards. And it was a raining day. It was like pouring with rain, and that's quite romantic as well. So yeah,
fabulous.
Nice to go.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
A song comes to mind, Walking in the Rain with the One I Love. I'm not going to sing because it's not my forte.
Well, we know who can sing though, don't we?
Yeah.
Well, it's a very, very good day for me today because it's a very special day and it's my son Zach's birthday and I keep going on about it and I put so much on Facebook and YouTube and all that. There he is. He's gorgeous.
Oh, handsome young man.
Very handsome, but I'm biased obviously, but very, very nice as well. He's got a lovely personality. And he's
like you, Sandra.
Oh, thank you. You're really kind. But yeah, it's been a great day. And we actually went for a meal yesterday and he's being spoilt rotten by his girlfriend today. So I don't know. He doesn't know what is happening to him. He's going to be surprised. So I just hope he has a really, really good day. And I think he's staying overnight for 2 nights or something like that. So wherever he's going, I hope he has a fabulous time.
Oh, wish him happy birthday from us.
Yes, will do. Are you going to miss him?
I am going to miss him
for 2 days.
I'm gonna miss him, but I'm gonna use that time wisely to clear up where I can clear up, if you know what I mean. Oh, dear.
Okay, so shall we start? Without further ado, let's bring on. We've got 2 guests today talking about relationships. So I'm going to bring on Nigel Beckles, who's one of our guests. Is Nigel here?
Like that picture?
Yeah, cool. Hello, Nigel. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, ladies. How are you?
We're good.
Really good.
So, Nigel, he's going to be one of our guests today. All encompassing loads of achievements. In fact, there's too many for me to read out. He's an author. He's written a book, How to Avoid Making Big Relationship Mistakes, which is, I think, what we all need to know. Certified relationship coach, a speaker, workshop facilitator, relationship specialist. I could go on, but
take a breath.
Yes.
And well, our other amazing guest is a lovely lady. She's known as the Queen of Inspirational Speaking and Presenting. She's a mentor, author. Oh, she's gorgeous. Radio and TV presenter. Let's welcome Yvonne Michéle to Women's Lik. And she's looking really good today, by the way.
Yvonne.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
Hi there. Rocking that lipstick.
Yes, love it.
There it goes across the screen. Every time it pops up, I jump almost. But yeah, it's great. Look at it. That's the woman. She's amazing.
Yes, so we'll be talking to both of you a little bit more. But let me kick off with Nigel first of all. So Nigel, all these accolades I've just talked about and the things that you've done so far in your career. You were for 10 years a radio presenter on Choice FM. So how did you transition from becoming a radio DJ into becoming a relationship coach? Because they're kind of there's some kind of similarities, but yeah, it just feels like a massive leap. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, for some reason, throughout my life, people have always gravitated towards me for relationship advice. So, in effect, I was doing it unofficially anyway, even before I started DJing, even before I joined Choice FM, etc. But after that phase of my life ended, I thought I'd like to write a book because I've always been a bookworm. I'm a book lover. So I thought, well, why don't I just write a book and everything will be in one place? However, it wasn't quite that straightforward because when you're looking at the subject of relationships, it's, well, how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? And I went down the rabbit hole very deeply. So the book took me 5 years of research. I didn't expect it to take that long, but you find something out, then you find out something else, and it just went on and on. So the final book is 397 pages, 24 chapters. And it kind of starts off, the first part is more about self-development, self-esteem, healthy boundaries, those type of things. And then the second part of the book gets into the kind of nitty-gritty mechanics, as I call it, of our relationship.
Oh, okay. Great.
Sounds good.
So, yeah, sounds good. I don't know, Sandra, would you like to?
I'm looking forward to reading that. I've got to be honest with you. And I'm a person who loves to read myself. But with Yvonne, I need to start with you as well, because obviously we're talking about love, we're talking about relationships. And as a result of the pandemic, you created a show on YouTube. Tell us about it and why you decided to start this show.
Okay, so at the beginning of the pandemic, you may remember Boris Johnson making all of these announcements about what we could and couldn't do. And I was an empty nester. My daughter was away at university, and so and single at the time. And so I suddenly thought, well, hold on a minute. How is this going to impact single people, empty nesters, people who are just living alone, not necessarily single, but living alone? Because the thing was, if you were in a relationship but lived separately, you had to stay separate. And so I was just like, I got annoyed, and I had a bit of a rant, have to admit. So I got on social media and I was just going on and on and on. And I was talking about, how can they man this? Are they going to send out, can I say it on the Sunday morning? Well, I was like, can they send out the pum pum police to navigate, this thing? This is what I was saying. So people were gravitating to what I was saying, and were like, yeah. And so what I said, because I was talking before the watershed, I said, I'll be back at 10 after dark, and we'll have a conversation. And loads of people just came, married people, single people, all types of people. And so we started this like meetup group online. And it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. We were still talking, putting the world to rights and all of this. And then I realized that I couldn't sustain that. And so we were on Zoom, and it was like, okay, we'll meet here this day, this time, for this amount of hours. And then more people started to come and watch. And so then I thought, I might have something here. And then I was interviewed by someone, and they said, would you like to do this on our platform too? So I said, okay. And so it just turned from this meetup into this show. So every Tuesday we met up, different topics, different experts, and it's just grown and grown and grown. So yeah, so we have the After Dark show, which is now going to be called the Yvonne Michéle show, because I need to kind of brand it in with the rest of what I'm doing. So yeah, every Tuesday. And we were supposed to start back on the 22nd of February, but due to unforeseen circumstances, we've moved it to the 8th of March, which is International Women's Day. So we've got something quite special to do on that day. So yeah,
very good day as well. And the other things I was just thinking as well, not just the fact that you said about your daughter going off to uni, but the fact that people could also watch the show and engage. And if anybody was lonely out there, you've got something to relate to as well.
Absolutely. We found so many lonely people, and they were like, can we just join? Can we be a part of the show? And I'm like, absolutely. So we have a panel as well of different people from all walks of life. So they're involved in the show as well. They get to put their opinions across. We have a Red Letter Tuesday where people write in with their relationship problems. It's just gone from one thing to another, and it's just like, okay, let's just go with this and see, you know, where it ends. And as long as it's helping people, that is the main thing. And I get letters in all the time, emails and stuff, how much the show has helped in their relationship. So yeah, it's all good.
Yvonne, I love the fact that you said you were an empty nester and you were single at the time.
Yeah, so I heard that as well.
And taking your own advice somewhere down the line. But just
yes,
to you for a bit, Nigel. You said at the beginning of your book, you talked about you started off with self-esteem and self-worth, and that's kind of where relationships have to start, as Angela knows, going back to looking after and loving yourself. You know, that's where it all starts, isn't it? You can't love someone else if you don't love yourself, love or like yourself. And it just got me to thinking about, especially as a parent and you've got young people growing up and exploring relationships, what if they're not sure about themselves, they're not happy in themselves? Or what about in our community if we're gay or queer or have another sort of sexuality? How does that work? I mean, it's complicated enough, isn't it? If you're cis or heterosexual, but you know, I come across youngsters who have different types of sexuality, and I wanted to ask you, you know, is that in your book? You know, have you got thoughts on that?
That's a lot to unpack. I don't delve into sexuality in my book. I'm heterosexual, and I think heterosexuals have enough challenges. Obviously, if you're bisexual, etc., you're going to have more challenges. But in terms of self-esteem, for me, self-esteem begins with healthy personal boundaries. Because if you don't have healthy personal boundaries, there are certain people in this world who are going to run over you like a truck. And there's an old saying that I believe in, which is what you allow is what will continue.
That's right.
So you have to learn how to basically look after yourself and protect yourself. And you can't do that. And you can't build healthy self-esteem if you've got poor personal boundaries. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
The other thing I've noticed is that a lot of people who've got poor personal boundaries or low self-esteem, some of them go into the relationships for unpaid therapy, to be quite honest. Some people, they don't want to do the work on themselves, so they'll go into a relationship hoping consciously or subconsciously that their partner is going to heal their emotional baggage. So the other thing you hear a lot is people saying, well, everyone's got emotional baggage, which is true to an extent, but how much is it? Is it a carry-on case when you're flying out to another country, or is it a trailer load? And obviously the bigger it is, you know, the more there's going to be to work through.
Yvonne, what are your thoughts on that? Because it is a complicated issue. That's why I threw it out there.
Right. So my thoughts on that is, you know, to some degree, I do agree with Nigel. You know, I think that the first base is the self. It has to be the self, and it has to be about the awareness of self first. So you're aware of your own emotion, your own emotional state. Where are you? You know, do you think about if you go somewhere new, for instance, if you're going to a new town, you come out the train station, right? What's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to find out where you are in order to go in the direction that you need to go in. So for us in ourselves, in our psyche, in our thinking, we have to think about, where are we now? What do I actually want in a relationship? And what I want in the relationship, is that already in me? And then if it's not in me, then that's where the work begins. But it is actually identifying, who am I? That's the first thing, to go back into self. And then after that, you know, you're talking about different sexualities and all of those things. Now, we know that the norm is heterosexualism. And I don't know if that's a word, but if I've made it up, it's fine, right? So that's the norm. And then we have all the others that have come, and there's more and more and more that's coming. I think there's I think 57 now, different kind of genders that we are existing in now. And so I think what we have to do is, when we are in that, is really hone in, identify who we are, and stick to that for the time being. But what happens is there's a lot of changing, crossing over, and that's where the unsurety comes. And we need assurity. We need to be sure about who we are before we even go into a relationship. We have to start, because what we do is we're not sure. Then we go here, we go there, we go over there, we go over there. Pain equals pain equals pain equals pain equals confusion. And that's why we're experiencing a lot of the things that we're seeing outside of ourselves now. So we go back to self. We start with self, and we're honest with self. And that, for me, that's where we have to start.
Wow.
Great answers.
Really interesting, really interesting. And as you know, you started, and Susie kind of posed a question about the different types of relationships people are getting into. Again, I was just thinking mainly from a heterosexual point of view. For now, we hear a lot of women kind of talking about. Women are always talking about relationships, partners, husbands, and what they're looking for, what they're not looking for. Women who've got older and still looking for love. What are both your thoughts on the differences in kind of men finding healthy relationships? Do you find that in the work that you're doing, there's a lot of men that are coming forward? I don't know, particularly black men, I don't know, but just men in general, as opposed to a lot more women. Are there any differences that you've noticed?
Is that for me or for Yvonne?
Well, for you, Nigel. Let you start, Nigel.
Okay. Here's the thing with guys, all right? Guys are brought up differently. They are socially orientated differently as boys. So boys are generally brought up with the big boys don't cry, man up, etc. So they don't feel comfortable often expressing their emotions. So there's something called guy code. So guy code is effectively man speak. So guys will generally talk about sports, work, hobbies, etc. They are less likely to discuss their emotions because they fear being judged by their peers. They don't want to appear weak to their friends, etc. So once I understood that, then I looked at the suicide rate for guys. So the suicide rate for guys is 2/3 plus higher than it is for women. So then the question becomes, why? Why is that? So men and women operate. There's that book, John Gray, Men Are From
Mars.
Yeah, Women Are From Venus, which I read many moons ago. But there is truth in that statement. Men and women operate differently. In terms of a guy seeking a healthy relationship, I think, again, generally, I don't like one size fits all solutions, but I think a woman is going to be more likely to say, yes, I'm looking for a healthy relationship, than a guy is going to say, oh, I'm looking for a healthy relationship. He may want that. He may not necessarily express that. I think a woman is more likely to say what she wants on an emotional level.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on that, Michelle, in your experience in the work that you're doing?
Okay, so my experience is, on the outset, on the outlook of it, men are less likely to say what they want, of sorts, on the outside of it. When you go into the inside, so once you get into conversation with a man, and it's more of a one-on-one, I'm trying to reflect on the show, because we have men on the show who are quite vocal about their wants, their desires, their needs. So I don't want to tar everyone with the same brush, because we're all individual, we're all different, and we have thoughts and feelings that are different from each other. But I think that from a woman's perspective, or from my own perspective of meeting different and speaking to different men on different levels, some who are pursuing, some who want advice, the general thing I get is that they do want to have relationships, but they're scared to speak about it because they don't want to be judged, or they don't want what they say to be thrown back in their face. And they feel that that's what will happen. Maybe it's happened before, but I generally think that both men and women do want to come together, but our language pattern is different. So when the man approaches to when the woman approaches, they have to, and this is where love languages come into play. They have to kind of navigate and make sure that they are intertwined and they are actually connecting. If there is no connection, then it's like, well, they just can't seem to just come together. But if there is something that they have in common, and the man feels comfortable enough, and it's really important that he feels comfortable enough, he will express. He will express it, because men they come, not to say all the time, but they come regularly and speak on a level. This is what I want. I want to meet a woman. I want to settle down. I don't want any more kids, because the men that I generally speak to are over 40. End of 39, 38, 39, that kind of, don't want any more children, but want to have this loving relationship where they are seen as a king and they are treated with respect. And so we have to determine, what is respect to you? What does it look like to you? Because it looks like different things to different people. And so it might look differently to the woman. She might feel that she can say all of these things, but he will see that as, well, if you say this, you're disrespecting me. And so again, there's the conflict there. So I think both parties will come together, but they have to give each other time to kind of see where their love language is and how they express to one another. But men generally do want to be in healthy relationships.
And they tend to be older as well. Thank you for that. There's a lot I want to comment on, but I want to kind of get through some. There's a lot I know people are listening, want to kind of get to hear some. I'm just going to pass over to Sandra.
Yeah, but I find that really weird, because for me it's like I'm going to give you an example. You know, like, imagine Love Island. I know I don't watch it, but I kind of do the concept of it. Or, you know, these dating shows where you watch them, and then the guy or the girl, they meet each other and then they fall in love. Or, you know what I mean? They get together. Then 5 minutes later they break up, and then 5 minutes later they're with somebody else. So I sometimes almost imagine, if it's as easy as that, then real life must be like that. Get what I mean? I know it's a show, but it's easy for a man to say, oh, I like that woman Sally, and then tomorrow I don't like her, and I don't like her tomorrow. I like Jane tomorrow. I sometimes wonder if people aren't willing to commit. Do people really want to commit like they used to? Of yesteryear, it felt like people wanted to commit.
Yeah.
But I'm finding that nowadays it doesn't feel like people are wanting it as much. And even watching Looking for Love, it was showing where women were, I'm happy to be on my own. That's fine. I'm quite happy just to be independent and be on my own. And there was a guy even saying, I've been on my own for a few years. I just want to be on my own now, that sort of thing. So are they generally still wanting to commit to love? What do you guys think?
Well, I think marriage is no longer the gold standard for relationships. You go back 40, 50 years, if a woman had a child out of wedlock, that child would be labeled as illegitimate, or the B word. Obviously, times have changed. And obviously women have got more independence now. I know when my mum was married to my dad, that was a time where a woman's name couldn't go on the mortgage.
Goodness.
You know, and you think, well, that's only like 60s, 70s, you know, so a lot of things have changed. In terms of someone not wanting commitment, well, it really depends on a lot of different factors there, because we form our kind of models when we're children. So I say between 0 and 6 or 0 and 7 years old. So we will tend to gravitate to the model we grow up in sometimes. So if we were brought up with parents who were married long term, we may more gravitate to want that. At the same time, however, you may be brought up by a single parent and you may desire to be married. So at the end of the day, you can't really say, I just think standards have changed. You know, I mean, even when I was growing up, you know, there'd be people or couples who had been married for 30 years. And then it becomes known that there's an outside child, as it was called. So even though the marriage looks good on the sense that it's lasted X amount of years, but obviously there's been infidelity in the marriage because the evidence is there walking around on the earth. But again, women would often stay in marriages for the financial security. because the man tended to control the finances, whereas now women have a lot more independence, which I think is great.
Yeah.
Because in reality, my father was unfaithful, and my mother divorced him, and that was unheard of, revolutionary, in fact. Because again, as I said, having a child that I've wedlocked, there was a stigma attached.
Mm-hmm.
Being a divorced woman, there was a stigma attached.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, things have changed.
Well,
Yvonne's wrecking our house there, isn't she?
It's interesting, Sandra, you mentioned Love Island, and what I've been watching recently is this experiment on Netflix called Love is Blind. And it's just so addictive, and we've had some really interesting discussions in my house about it, because
Yvonne's looking excited by that.
haven't seen it. All the couples go there wanting to form a relationship, and they build a bond over just talking and asking questions, but completely sight unseen. They can't see the other person, so they just get to know them by their voice and their mannerisms and their sense of humor and just that emotional connection. And I think it was fascinating to see that people were saying, the men were saying that, you know, really talking openly to each other about their feelings and about their emotional feelings, and there were tears and really strong emotional connections built up. So that shows me that even though men tend to, you know, generalizing, not have that kind of fluency when talking about their feelings, it depends on the setting and it depends on what situation they're in, because this whole sort of football culture and man code, what kind of goes on behind it is a little bit more about what's going on, you know, how's the things at home, and, you know, it's done in a different way. It's not quite as intense and direct as women will talk about it, but it's still there. And that's part of their kind of male bonding. And there will be some talk about relationships. But my question is, long story short, is do you think that there is too much focus and emphasis on physical appearance? Because maybe that's why, Sandra, in Love Island, it's like a conveyor belt, because all they're falling in love with is the exterior. So what are your thoughts, Yvonne, on us being a kind of very much, you know, a Tinder swiping society, and all we've got is the next attractive person? That didn't work. Next.
Well, the next culture very much exists. I think with these TV programs, especially with this Love is Blind, I think there is something in it when you are having a conversation and getting to know that person without actually physically seeing them. And the reason why I say that is because of the clients that I have and how I instruct them how to date. So then obviously we're in an online culture now. We could only do things online. And so rather than the you know, you can do the FaceTime, you can see the person, and it's good to see their expressions. But sometimes it's just good to just have a open conversation and just talk and keep talking. Because in the beginning of any relationship, this is the fact of the matter. In any relationship that's new, you will always bring the representative of who you are.
Yeah.
You're not actually bringing the real you, because what you want to do is impress the person. You want them to like you. You want them to spend time with you. So you are on your best behavior. And so, but after a while, each person starts to relax, and then because you can only be that representative for a certain amount of time. And then you start to show who you really are, what your real values are, what your real vision is, you know, all of those things of who you are, your personality, the things that you think about all the time, the person that makes you, it starts to come out, because you can only pretend for a certain amount of time. So these things they do work, and I've seen it work. I've seen it work in my own dating. I've seen that work, and I'm like, okay, that person is a no. Before you even get that connected, or that meeting, or where you want to touch the hand, or you want to feel the embrace, or the cuddle, or all of, before any of that starts, it's good to have a conversation, because you actually get to know who that person is at their core. And then you can start with that. If they're, unfortunately, if you're not physically attracted to them, well, I don't know what to do about that, but you know, because it can happen. Hopefully, in most case scenario, is that you've actually connected with that person on a higher level than just the facade of you look good, you look good, you know. Those things.
I like you saying that. I've got to say that when I was younger and I went out with very, very good looking guys, I was very vain, and there were things that if I didn't like what shoes you were wearing, I'm sorry guys who was watching this, I'm with
you on that, Sandra.
I would dump the guy if he had some espadrilles and a pair of socks on, and I did actually do that. I do apologise for anybody who's watching. That was my vanity, and I'm apologetic about that. And the other thing was this: I was finding guys that were bad, bad mans. I was going out with guys that had an evil streak. I liked that. There was a sort of quality, perhaps coming from my dad. I was looking at guys that are a bit like my dad. Not to say that you know what I mean. He was a hard guy, and is sort of this hardened guy. And I was looking at guys that were like my dad, and it wasn't working for me. And that's what I know. So, but I was looking at very good-looking guys that hadn't. Absolutely, it wasn't going to work. You know, it wasn't going to work because we weren't going to get together. We weren't going to gel, but I was looking at the wrong thing, and it's about everything, the bigger picture of all of it. So I agree with what you're saying there. But may I ask you very quickly, Yvonne, about your retreats? What happens? You sort of had these retreats. What happens on those retreats? Tell us about that.
So the retreats, they are retreats. So it's a relationship retreat where you find out about relationships. So we had one in October, and we had different speakers talking about different aspects of relationships. But the fundamental part of the retreat, it always comes back to self. It always does. And taking responsibility for yourself, taking responsibility for your actions, taking responsibility for the things that you say, taking responsibility for the person that you choose. Because I hear a lot of clients say, oh, he did this, or she did that, or or the other. But actually, you have to respond, because that's the person you chose. Hello. So let's take it right back to self, and let's see where, oh, he did this, but did you not see that coming? Oh, well, there was something. It's like one of the clients said, oh, my boyfriend deceived me about his finances. And she kept going. So I said, so was it about the money? Well, no, it wasn't. And did you not see that there was an issue in his finances before you was ready to go and buy the house? And she was like, yeah. And I said, okay, let's go back there. Let's leave the boyfriend with the finance, and let's go back to the moment when you knew, because you just dismissed it. And then you went on and on and on and on for this about a period of time, and now you want to get upset. No. Take responsibility for what you've chosen, because you chose it. No one else chose it. You did. And you wanted to believe the lie, so you did.
I totally agree with that. I mean, in business, there's something called due diligence, which might sound a little cold when you're applying it to dating or relationships, but it's true. I mean, if you look at Steve Harvey's book,
Act Like a Man. Yeah.
So it's like, he advocates a 90-day probation period. It's like going for when you go for a new job, you don't just get the job permanently, do you? You've got to kind of prove yourself. The same principle applies, But again, a lot of people get drawn into the physical attraction, the sexual attraction, and then they get jiggy, and then they get into a relationship, and then 3-6 months down the road, there's dramas. Well,
Nigel, sorry, just explain jiggy for anyone who doesn't know.
Stop it.
Sexual interaction.
Pretending to make babies.
So at the end of the day, there aren't many upsides to rushing into a relationship. There just isn't. I'm not saying if you meet somebody and you decide to have sex with them, it's not going to blossom into a wonderful relationship. It might, but in my opinion, the odds are slim.
I can't remember which one of you mentioned fidelity in your response to one of our questions, and that's something that we've kind of skirted around, but it can be a deal breaker. I mean, if you are, for example, in a relationship with someone who's in a relationship with someone else, and then down the line it happened to you, as Yvonne was saying, you knew what you were getting. You knew that that person showed themselves to you, and you chose to ignore it, thinking that, you know, with you it might be different. But that's the person they were. They were a person who was capable of being unfaithful. But do you think that is something that you can take a risk on, thinking that the person might change? Because I'm sure watching this, there'll be loads of people who are in that kind of halfway house. And interestingly, I was with somebody who was serially unfaithful to his girlfriends. And I said to him, just talk me through that. I need to understand it. And his response was really interesting. He said, I don't want to be on my own. So if I break up with someone, I might have a gap. So what I do, I like to know I've got a couple on in the kind of pot, yeah. And if that one decides to leave me because I've behaved badly, I know there's a couple more in that pot cooking.
Yeah,
so his rationale was very, very clear. It's like, I don't want to lose out and be a lonesome. So rather than ditch the girl and break the relationship, I'll keep going until she breaks up with me, but I know I've got someone else to go with. And I thought, wow.
Yeah, but there's a word for that. It's called codependency. If someone can't function without being single on their own, then they have codependency issues.
Explain that, because I think not everyone knows what that means. It's a sort of psychotherapy.
Exactly what I just said.
Yeah.
If someone cannot function being single, they always have to have somebody in their life. By definition, they are codependent, because effectively they're not an independent individual. They can't function without somebody else. And that's dangerous territory to be in. Now, a guy can be codependent, just like a woman can be codependent. It's just a little bit more risky for a woman, because women who have got codependent issues are more likely to stay with an abusive partner, because they don't want to leave, but they're not going to swap. They're not going to be swapping partners like a player. They will remain faithful to that person, even though that person's abusing them.
Or they may be scared of being on their own.
Yeah, but there's a whole other dynamics going on. If you're looking at an abusive relationship, that's a whole different dynamic to a healthy relationship. Whole different ball game. Because the abuser will use certain tactics to keep the victim in that situation. And I like what Yvonne said about representative, because that's a line from a Chris Rock stand-up, actually, which I often use myself. You know, the first year, when you're dating someone, you're not meeting the real them. You're meeting their representative. And that also reminded me of abusers, because when you meet an abuser, say you're dating, you meet an abuser. Abusers are often very charming and charismatic. So you're meeting their representative. It's only when you get in, when you're financially, emotionally, time invested, then the mask starts to come off. And as I always say, it's easy to get into relationships. If you get into an abusive relationship, getting out can be difficult. Some women don't get out at all.
And I was just going to say, just following on what you were saying, Nigel, is going back to what Yvonne was saying. It's all about self. If you're not comfortable and happy and done the work on yourself, then how are you going to be presenting yourself to an intended person that you actually want to be with? If you're not steadying yourself within yourself, you will attract, you know, where you are and what you will attract who you are at that time as well.
Well, you know, I'll go back to what Yvonne said, in the sense that you have to know yourself. You have to know yourself, you know. And as I say, you know, there are a lot of people out there looking for unpaid therapy. In my book, actually, I've got a chapter called Relationship Patterns, which talks about why certain people go through, it's the same cycle over and over again. So, and the other issue is some people don't just give themselves time to heal. So instead of healing from the previous relationship, and as Yvonne said, take responsibility for their part in the situation, they're on to the next person. In olden days, we'd call that the rebound. So you don't give yourself time to kind of heal and work out, well, why did that happen? It's like having a self-inventory. It's like checking yourself out. But some people don't like to do that. But then they want to blame everybody else except looking at themselves.
Absolutely.
You saying that, I've got a friend who's trying to meet somebody, who's looking to meet someone, and has gone out on many dates, and sometimes, you know, that person might tell me something, and I'm like, straight away, kick him to the curb. No, kick him to the curb. That's not the man. Kick him to the curb. He's not right. And because of something the person has said, obviously it's her choice, not mine, but it's my feelings, as opposed to if she decides to go out with him, that's up to her. But she might have had one date, and then I'm like, no, what did you say? No, he's not the right person. You just told me this. No, walk away now. That's what I sort of kind of say. But are there any dating red flags? Like, are there top dating red flags that either one of you would like to tell me? Like, Nigel, what do you think dating, you know, like that we should look out for?
Well, control for a start.
Yeah.
If someone's controlling, that's a big red flag. Because if you look at the dynamics of abusive relationships, fundamentally, they're about power and control. That's what the abuser wants. So they've got different tactics of how they go about that. But control for me is a big one. Another one would be interruption. If they're constantly interrupting you, because again, that links back to control, because they don't want you to express yourself. Obviously, short temper. That's another big red flag. If you go out for a meal and they're rude to the staff, that might seem like a benign red flag, but if they're going to speak to people who are providing them a service in a horrible way, well, eventually they're going to be talking to you like that. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, Nigel's touched on some good things there, actually. I just want to bring it back to the control thing, because all of them come under the heading of control. The thing is, with red flags, they can be so subtle, and I think we need to kind of just delve into that a little bit. It can be as subtle as, I've met you, I like you. And if you've met on a dating site, this is a real good one. I've met you, I like you, I want you to come off the dating site now. And I've just met you. So to that person who's reciprocating and hearing that, it's like, oh,
he wants me.
They've chosen me. But actually, there's an undertone to that. There is a real undertone to that, because you haven't actually got to know that person yet, but that person's already put in that controlling behavior straight away. I want you to come off. Why would you, you have to start questioning, well, why would that person say that? What is going on with that person? So control can become in a very subtly that you may not see. And so sometimes women and men are like, oh, I just didn't see that. But actually it was right there, black and white, in your face. So subtle. So, you know, for those people who are listening, I just want them to think about that. If you are online dating and you meet someone and straight away they're saying, I want you to come off, just take a step back a moment. Take a step back. I'm not saying don't talk to them, but just don't do anything. Just see how they carry on and be aware of other people's behaviors, because you know, people will always show you who they are. You know, they will. You just need to give them time. So yeah, there's a lots of dating things, things that go on in dating that are red flags. Even in conversation, I loved it, Nigel, when Nigel said, you know, when you go out to dinner and how they treat the waitresses, it's so key, because some people get angry just like that. And you think, oh, they've got a point. But actually, it's not about the point. It's about how quickly they get upset. Because if they get upset quickly with them and they're strangers, they can easily get upset with you the same way. And so there are little, you know, I agree with everything that Nigel says. Those red flags are there for us to pay attention. And that is the main thing, paying attention.
I like that.
I do as well. Yeah.
It's really weird. My dad said to my husband before we got married, make sure you take care of my daughter, you know, like that. Make sure, and you know what my dad, and what my husband said to my dad, then to be husband, can you tell Sandra that then, please? As if to say it was the other way around. He's like, can you tell Sandra that, please? And I was like, oh, and I was like, oh, what's that mean then? I mean, I'm the one, you know what I mean? So my dad was like, oh, yeah, because Sandra, I'm like, probably like my mom, do you know what I mean? Sort of like that sort of person. So yeah, I had to take note of that.
Oh, Sure. I just wanted to just quickly, just briefly, for both of you, for those people who don't want, I'm not really into, you know, the online kind of Tinders and swiping left and right, but since social media's kind of like gone off big time, that seems to be the main, and this is just my judgment, the main way of kind of meeting somebody.
No, that's correct.
To get into a relationship.
No,
but what if you don't want to kind of like do that? Trying to meet someone in a traditional way, you know, like not meeting them down the pub or just going into, what would you advise to those kind of people?
Well, in my book, I've got a whole chapter about online dating, etc. But online dating is the biggest method in the world of meeting somebody new. That's why you've got Tinder. I don't know if you watched the Tinder Swindler on Netflix.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it yet.
That was highly interesting. But what I noticed is more mature women, especially more mature Black women, tend to be resistant to the idea of online dating.
How did you guess?
I've spoken to women about it. You know, some feel like it makes them look desperate, etc., etc. But there's nothing wrong with online dating. It's just like when you're dating in real life, you have to pay attention. It's as simple as that. If you're going to put on your dating profile, oh, looking for love, or looking for my soulmate, well, a relationship predator is going to look at that profile and say, yeah, ripe for the picking, ripe, because you're showing vulnerability. So there's nothing wrong with online dating at all. I just think to me, it's more of a generational thing. And obviously it's working because you just look at the stats. You look at the stats for online dating, it's through the charts. I'm not saying that, you know, if you went out to a nightclub and met somebody and you're single and you like them and you find them attractive, but there's still risks inherent in that. Because going back to what Yvonne said, if you're not paying attention to any potential red flags, you're still going to end up in the doo-doo anyway, as far as relationship-wise, because you're not paying attention. So it doesn't really matter what forum you're using. The mantra is pay attention.
I'm sorry, I'm just writing my little book of Nigel-isms. Jiggy.
You know, you're looking, Nigel, I've got to ask you about your Looking for Love film. What's been the reaction to that film? Because obviously there are a lot of sort of famous people in there. Are people learning by that?
I hope so. It's won awards, so I would hope so. I think it's. I mean, yes, I'm in it, but it's very comprehensive. It covers relationships from various points of view. You know, so I think it's brilliant. Personally, I mean, like 2 hours. I mean, it is a long watch, but it doesn't feel like a long watch.
No, it's interesting. But may I ask? Sorry, someone's put a question up, Claude, saying, when do you exchange numbers? Could you both tell? Because I've got things like that. When do you exchange numbers? Where do you go on your first date? Those sort of things. So Yvonne, when do you exchange numbers?
I think if you're on a dating site and you're talking backwards and forth, I think you can exchange numbers, but I think you can do that quite early, but make it very clear as to why you're exchanging numbers. So it might be that, you know, it doesn't feel right or feel comfortable on the dating site, and you want to take it off because you want to move to that next stage of talking to the person. So, you know, you talk and you say to the person, don't call me after certain times, blah, 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 all of those kind of things. But in saying, I'm just going to put a little disclaimer in there, because you have to have the conversation with the person to know when they work. If they're a night worker, you might not be able to, they might call you at a different time. So it might not be that they're looking for a booty call. It might be that that's the time that's conducive. So you kind of work that out. But you give the number, I would give a number quite quickly, because quicker you give the numbers, you can start to find out about the person, and then you're not going to waste your time as much. Time, people, what we don't realise is the value of time. Time is valuable. It's one of the most valuable assets that we have. But we don't really look at that and think, oh, listen, don't waste my time. That's how I am. Don't waste my time. So get the number quickly. First date is a drink. Go somewhere that there are lots of people that you're safe. You always tell a family member or your friend or, you know, a colleague where you are going to be, what time, the person's name, get their details. You don't just meet people just like that. Let me just say that. You don't do that, because it's not safe for a man and it's not safe for a woman. So I would say get as much details about the person as possibly can. Your first date, you go out for a drink. It's not for dinner. If the drink turns into dinner, that's a different thing. But the intention is a drink. Hello, nice to meet you. See if the person's got their own teeth or whatever it is. One thing in it, and then go from there. Take it baby steps. Yeah, you're not going to have dinner and then you're going to go and have sex. No.
Good advice. We've got a slight echo on your line. I don't know whether anyone else can hear that.
I can hear it as well. Yeah.
Yvonne, have you got to? You have just checking because obviously we are live. Are you on two screens or anything?
On a mobile or something?
Because we've got an echo on your. Just for anyone that's listening, you're probably getting that as well.
Should I come out? Because you're all echoing to me.
Oh. Well, you're sounding better now, but it was very echoey a minute ago. So anybody that's listening,
I've not done anything. I've not changed anything.
Oh, right, okay. No, stay with us, and we just want to make sure that all's well there. Someone's just having their own teeth.
Someone's saying they love the teeth. Yeah, it's always good to have teeth if you're going on a date, isn't it? Could I just ask another quick question as well? Was about, you know, back in the days. I'm not sure if this is a statement that's still current now. Is about, you know, I'm not in a relationship. We're just kind of like, well, we were together for a while, and now we're kind of like, you know, I like having sex with him. I like having sex with her. So we're just friends with benefits. I just heard someone whistle then. Maybe the sex is good and it's hot, but you know, this whole thing about friends with benefits, that's just, it brings up different connotations, certainly for me. And I don't know whether Nigel's got a little line for that as well. But yeah, friends with benefits. What are your thoughts on that kind of relationship?
Which is why my book took me 5 years. Got a whole chapter on friends with benefits. Whole chapter.
Busy man.
Can we just share a few kind of really pertinent tips?
Well, here's the thing. It's kind of like science biology. So women have a hormone called oxytocin, which is known as the cuddle hormone. Both genders have that hormone, but women have more. It's called the cuddle drug because that's what makes people bond together. So when you touch hands, or if a mother's breastfeeding their child, or a woman has an orgasm, she produces this oxytocin. Men don't have it so much. So I always caution women, say, well, you know, if you want to, you know, we're all big people, consenting adults. If you want to go down that road, fine, but just be aware of the risk that you will probably get more emotionally involved than the guy. A guy can just do his things and he's off. He's not gotten any emotional, you know, investment as such. For women, it's different. So can it work? Yes, if both people are honest, because what happens with friends with benefits, sometimes one party will assume it's exclusive when it's not. Then are you practicing safe sex? Because if you're not, and you think it's exclusive and it's not exclusive and they're sleeping with somebody else, they're going to might bring something back to you called an STD, right? So it can work for convenience sake, but again, everyone's different. You know, some people quite happy to do that. Others know they want a solid relationship. But then the other thing that I found interesting when I was researching my book, something I coined FWB by default. So what that means is you've been in a relationship, the relationship is now over, but you're still continuing to have sex, hoping perhaps that you can rekindle the relationship that way. Or it may be the case that you're still emotionally invested, or both. So then you could end up with an ex-partner, but still engaging in sexual relations, whereas the ex-partner may be off doing other things with other people. So it is a risky strategy in some respects, but in other respect, you've got to look at it and say, well, you know, we're all big people. You know, we make choices, but we should make informed choices.
What about this thing? I've got it very quickly. I know we're running out of time, but I know people who are what they call polyamorous. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. So people are in relationships. They both, the man and the woman, both have partners, and they're allowed to go out and, you know, sleep with other people, and they've made that agreement. But if they're happy with that, isn't that, I'm not saying okay, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, to each their own. Isn't that all right then?
Well,
what I mean?
I was on a program with a poly, I'll get my tongue around the word, but a lady who does that. But what I understood from that discussion, there are different levels to it. So it's not always about sex. It might be I've got a friend of the opposite sex who I'm very close with, but there's no sexual activity involved in that. So there's different levels to it. So that was my understanding anyway. It's not always necessarily about sex.
Sexual side. Okay.
It's about relationships. It's about having a relationship. And most of the case scenarios, sex is involved in those relationships. I mean, that's a whole different, that's a show in itself. So, but I do want to go back to, if I could just quickly go back to the friends with benefits. It doesn't work long term, in my opinion. It will work short term because 1 out of the 2 will always want more, one of them, and then the other one won't be able to give it. So for me, and I say this to my clients, if you want to go and do it, I give it 6 months tops, because one of you is going to want more, or one of you is going to get hurt. So if you want to be the hurt one, go ahead and do that. It's up to you. Might not be the hurt one, but yeah, this is a new terminology called singlish.
English.
Put that one down, Susie, on your list.
I love it.
That's Yvonne's, that's not Nigel's.
We are getting close to time. Can I ask you both what your future plans are? Yvonne, what are your future plans in terms of, relationship issues and whatever you're doing? What have you got going for the future?
What I've got a new program coming out. I have some free training as well on relationships. I've got 2 free trainings. One is about love languages, and the other one is how to find the love of your life. Yes, and that's a free training. I'm doing lots more. The show's coming out. I've got our retreat is coming back on the 21st of May, so another live event. So we're looking for lots and lots of single people to come and enjoy it and get some knowledge and how to date and learn and even come together and maybe find love.
Meet on the retreat. Yeah. What about you, Nigel? What about you? Thank you very much, Yvonne. What about you, Nigel? What have you got coming up, or any plans?
Well, I mean, as you know, I have a podcast series where I interview therapists, life coaches, relationship coaches, obviously authors, etc. So I should be doing a few more of those. I've got 2 further books coming out, because the first book was about really trying to advise people how to get themselves together for a healthy relationship before they start out there. So I've done another 2 book drafts. So one is about abusive relationships, which is called How to Avoid Abusive Relationships. And then the other one is called Exposing the Narcissist in Relationships, because narcissism is one of my topics. So that's what I'm hoping to do this year. I'm not doing any more. I mean, last year what did I do last year course wise? Psychology of Relationships diploma, and I done dealing with narcissism diploma. So I've done those last year. So I might do one more actually. I'm tempted to do a counseling course, because effectively, you see, with coaching is about setting goals for the future, and counseling is about dealing with issues from the past. So I get people approach me sometimes for coaching, but when I talk to them, I say, no, you don't need coaching, you need counseling, and I'm not qualified to do that. I can point in the right direction, but that's not what I'm about. So go and do that. When you're ready, then you can come back. So let's hope it's going to be a better year than last year. At least we're out of lockdown now.
I hope that it's really good, and we look forward to hearing, seeing those books and reading those books. Just to make you aware, guys, everybody that's watching and listening, we are going out next on the 27th of March for Mothering Sunday. It should be a Mothering Sunday special. We're going to be a little bit longer than an hour, so put that in your diary, 27th of March. Anything else from you ladies that you want? Any final thing to say before we come to an end?
I was going to ask actually, just any, the next program would be how to maintain the long-term relationships, having done all these dating tips and snagged the person.
Yeah, that'd be good.
How to actually, keep that long-term relationship going and sustained and healthy. you know, forever, because that in itself, you don't just get the wedding and then just, you know, you have to turn up and show up every day. And don't send your representative either.
Definitely.
No.
Any final word from you, Angela, at all?
Just to say, fantastic. I'm just thinking we're always running out of time, but I'm just thinking there's just enough for people to kind of like take away with, and great information certainly for me to pass on to other people. Really enjoyed both of you, Yvonne and Nigel, your company, and obviously our ladies as well. So yeah, great. Thanks very much for joining us on Women's Lik, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye.